Hello again, and welcome to the New Earth Visioning Project. I am Janice Coyle, and I founded this group. And we have an incredibly wonderful guest today, Dr. Gerry Eitner. Welcome again, Gerry.
Thank you, Janice. It's good to be with you.
So good to be with you. Let's learn a little bit more about this wonderful woman. Dr. Gerry Eitner is a mystic since childhood, and she is a Sacred Heart Reiki master and spiritual teacher who also developed the Communities of Peace program. And as part of this program, she initiated the first model of Global Family Day, resolutions that have recently passed both houses of the U.S. Congress and the UN. Gerry was a delegate to the United Nations Millennium Forum, a member of the U.S. team to write the Earth Charter, has taught meditation and other things at the Pentagon, and has a Ph.D. in eco-psychology. She can be reached through her website, gerryeitner.com. Gerry's perspective is that we are here in this lifetime to experience love and to express that love that we are with others. All her work with people is to help them with this. She is available in many ways to others with individual work, in groups, workshops, and retreats. The Communities of Peace was founded as a means to help demonstrate what's possible when people live in this ideal. Since that time, the program has been seated in 10 U.S. communities, and projects have extended to 6 other countries. There's so much more we could say about Gerry, but I have a first question for you.
I'm here.
Okay. You, like some of us, have had spiritual experiences and amazing adventures since childhood. Tell us about some of those.
The first major experience I had when I was about 10 years old, and as I mentioned to you earlier, I'd speak a little bit about trauma. I think this experience when I was 10 was catalyzed by a traumatic experience I had when I was 7, where I felt that I had committed this horrible, horrible sin that I might be burning in hell forever and ever and ever. And what I think happened is that my soul, if you will, kind of jumped really as high as I could, saying, help, help, what can I do, kind of a thing. So I wasn't speaking about this to anybody. So when I was about 10 years old, we lived in northern Pennsylvania, northwest Pennsylvania, in the country and in the woods. And I would walk a lot individually in the woods just because I loved it. And all of a sudden one day, what looked like the sun, but there was a personhood behind the sun, if you would, asked me what I wanted from this life. And out of my little child heart sprung the word wisdom. It's not really the kind of a word that most little kids would even think about, but I answered, so to speak, and there was this really fairly dramatic oneness and connection with what some people might call God. I don't know that I would use that term, but a dramatic experience. I didn't tell anybody about that experience for probably 40 years or so, because it just went so deep that there was nobody that I even thought about to talk about. So that was the first one as a child. So the scene was set, so to speak, at that age. I've had other experiences since that time, and do you want me to give some examples of those, or?
Please, and I understand that you have been in connection with masters, ascended masters.
Yes.
And things like that. Tell us a little bit about those things, yes.
If people don't know the term, in the Catholic upbringing, one might call them saints, but it's a little bit broader than that, a level of ascended beings who have had lives as human beings, but are no longer coming back here to interact on this plane. So I've had quite a bit of experiences with ascended masters and with angels and with Mary, etc. And I can speak of some of those examples if you like.
Yes. What did they tell you? What did you learn from them? I think we'd love to hear this.
They all have different areas of expertise.
Mhm.
And so it depends really on what the internal person is, what the questions you're asking, and then the level that you're on. I call it like frequency, a radio station, etc. And so that the level of questions you're asking and who responds depends. Can you be on the same wavelength, so to speak? I'll give you a couple of examples.
Please. Please.
When I don't think you mentioned it in the biography, but I was behind the program to put a peace pole into the Pentagon. I formed a nonprofit, and we officially put a peace pole into the Pentagon. And when that was happening, there was a little girl who wanted to be there. We were in the Secretary of the Army's conference room, and there were 75 people, and I was kind of beating people off with a stick at that point who wanted to be there. But this young 8-year-old girl wanted to come to help start a children's peace quilt based on a model that had been done mostly by adults. And I was standing in the aisle because I was running the meeting, I was hosting it. And all of a sudden, Mary comes to me, Jesus's mother, Mary, came to me above my head and said, I want you to take this on because you are a woman and you're a mother and you will understand this. So it was a very, very incredible project that ended up having thousands of kids in 32 countries and lots of high profile, and been known by the Wall Street Journal to create miracles. So that was one experience with Mary. Another happened when I moved out here to Warrenton. I live in Warrenton, Virginia, for people who don't know that. And I had at that point I was renting a house on 2.5 acres. And Mary came to me and she said, I want you to put a statue of me in the woods here and a meditation bench so that people can sit with me and meditate with me. And she told me exactly where to go to get the statue. It was in Annandale, and the particular place. That was on a Tuesday when I had just moved out here. And so by Thursday, I went into Annandale to this garden shop, was looking for a statue of Mary, but they were all $250. And I said, well, I'm looking for a statue of Mary. And this person said, well, some just came in on Tuesday. They're out there they're not even unwrapped yet. So I went out there and there was a wonderful statue of Mary that I still have that was on sale for $19, which I could afford. And so that Mary has come to me. A number of ascended masters have come with different messages and different openings. Melchizedek, the angel Melchizedek form, came to me in total light at one point and opened the path between my third eye and my heart. Been lots and lots of different types of what people might call mystical experiences. I don't know whether experiences with people after they die, quote unquote, is part of this, your idea for this particular section or questioning, or?
Well, some of us have experienced that. I have, in connection with departed people. I went to a course at the Monroe Institute, and we all experienced that, every one of us.
Yeah.
So it's possible. It's amazing what we really are, and we're going to go into that. when we talk about nature
Yeah.
and what we really are and how expanded we actually are and don't know it, and how we are capable of being conscious of other dimensions and levels. And I have experienced it a number of times. I don't know that I've talked about it, but maybe I will myself. But yes, I've experienced that, and I know that's we're all capable of that. The people that came to our course, a couple of them were very skeptic husbands that were dragged there by their wives, and one of them became the best one to contact the people on the other side. So yeah, we all have that ability.
When my mother died, she came immediately to me, and within a day or so, and we had just been with her a minute before she died, and then she came the next day, and we were grieving, of course, and looking for a casket, and it was a tough one, and she came and she said, "I want that one." so there are many different experiences I've had with people who have died, and they're all different. That's the one I often tell because it's so specific and so concrete. Yeah. I've had a full Kundalini experience. I don't know if people want to hear about that and what that was like, and the pros and cons and difficulties of what that was like for me. I was lying in bed at 6:30 in the morning, and all of a sudden there was this electricity that came from the bottom of my spine all the way up my spine to over my head. And all of a sudden I was talking with archangels and seeing the meaning of the world and extreme experiences like that. That opened those levels so that they remained and remain now. Now, the kind of another part to all of that, and I describe it as like the camera shutter going wide open. And then it took me years to be able to move that camera shutter back to find focus so that I could balance checkbooks and things of that sort. So it's depending on what people want to know about my experiences, it's definitely a plus. But on the other hand, it leaves you with a balancing act kind of a thing going on too.
Well, let's open this to any questions anybody has. Anybody have any questions? You can just unmute yourself and ask any question you'd like.
I have a question. Fascinating story. So all of this seems to have come naturally to you. And I also have trauma background. I don't recall ever having an experience like you suggested, but I've recently gotten interested in the oracles and doing oracle readings for myself every day. Just kind of, it started out as sort of a fun journal prompt type activity. But I also have gotten interested a lot in near-death experiences and life on the other side of the veil, because I lost my brother, who I was very close to, my younger brother, in 2016. So I started doing a lot of reading about that and researching about that. And I feel him tangibly, like on my right shoulder all the time, like he's with me all the time. So when I do these oracle readings, I do as they recommend, and I call in the ascended masters and the angels, but I'm doing it more because I know that's what I'm supposed to do, and I'm following instructions. And can you learn to do this, and how do you get from where I'm at to maybe I'll never be where you are, but how do you progress in this from where I am?
You can learn more. Yes. I taught all of that for at least 10 years or so. It's some of the work that I taught at the Pentagon as well. And yes, you can learn to open up into the higher dimensions, for instance. Those are latent within people. I may have been pre-exposed, yes, indeed, but everybody can open those up more. And dropping the old emotional patterns, traumas, so on and so forth, that are impeding all of that is part of the thing. I know when I became a Reiki master, I had became a first degree Reiki in 1982, second in 1987, And the Reiki attunements to become, to hold that light, if you will, and energy, are successive amounts of holding that. And when I became a second degree, then I started thinking, well, gee, maybe I'll become a Reiki master. I never thought about that. My guys said from above, no, it would kill you. And I thought, ooh, I didn't ask how or why. I just thought, I guess I won't do that. Yeah. And then in 1989, I spoke the trauma that I had not spoken for 42 years that I referred to earlier. And it was a workshop, etc. Somebody heard me. They didn't try to do anything about it. It was just speaking and being heard. And then about a couple of weeks later, my guys came in and they said, now you can become a Reiki master. And I recognized that if you have a clog in the pipe, so to speak, the pipe can't hold the light. And so speaking and clearing traumas, emotional backup, etc., is really important. Yeah, for all of that. And when I did become a Reiki master, suddenly on the other side of the world in New Zealand, sitting in the ocean on a rock with my feet in the ocean, I'm condensing the story here, but I had to just relax into nature for 3 weeks, just sleeping for 12 hours a day before I could unwind and slow down, so to speak. You'll get that. I can see it in your face. Yeah. So it's holding the light. Absolutely. How do you do that? And do you want to do that? And then how do you do it? And removing the clogs in the pipe, so to speak, important.
Yes, there must be a lot of clogs because I've been working on it for a long time. But thank you.
Of course, yeah. It has to do with understanding you have higher senses. You can operate from the higher chakras. How do you do that? But yes, it can be taught. Right.
Anyone else? Speak up.
It sounds like when you had your Kundalini experience that it was kind of a instantaneous kind of a situation rather than a asking for it necessarily or working on it or bringing it on. And I'm wondering if it's taken step by step, if it would be more gentle in coming. What your opinion is?
Well, that's what Kundalini yoga is about, is doing it gradually. Yeah. And it was precipitated for sure by my interacting with somebody who had come from India, who had gone through some major spiritual things. So in other words, I was asking him a lot of questions, etc. And if you speak of frequency, for instance, if he was carrying a really high frequency or energy, and I was asking questions, I picked up the predisposition for the Kundalini experience. Yeah. But yes, it's better to do it gradually if you can. I agree. Yeah. So when that happened to me, I thought, well, this is the prize, this level. And how do I maintain that level while helping other people to achieve that level gradually, which is why I teach Reiki, why I work with people with nature, why I work with people, depending on what's going on with them, because different things are going on with people, as to how can I help? What do you want to do and how can I help? That kind of thing.
I had a quick question. How were you brought into the Pentagon and what did you tell them?
That's a good question, right? That way, I was teaching for 10 years between the mid 80s and the mid 90s with an organization called Free Soul, which taught people how to open up into higher dimensions and connect with what they called guides, etc. It turned out, you get kind of the level that you're on, and mine happened to be Ascended Masters. But the Pentagon at that point had a meditation group, and they were looking for somebody to come in and teach and do programs. And so I was the one who the organization chose to bring in. I think the reason they chose me, there were other teachers, et cetera, in this area, but I think the reason they chose me was because I was wearing business suits and high heels, and I looked like them. I was not wearing, Birkenstocks and whatever. And so at that point, there were a number of newspaper articles that were being written about, me in those teachings. And one of them said, "She looks like your neighbor next door." And I think that's why. But I taught a series. We called it meditation, but it really was helping people to learn how, if they wish, which these people did, to go into higher spaces and and connect with guides and drop the old stuff, all of that. So yeah, it was probably 8 to 12 weeks, something like that. But it was good to be asked, but I'm sure that's why they asked him.
Okay, and we have a question from Ted. He wrote it down. What did you get for about the meaning of the world, and how are we supposed to be and live? We're going to get into part of that, but if you can answer some of it now.
Right. I remember some of my past lives, so I'm a reincarnationist, and I tell people, constant disclaimer: you don't have to believe what I say. These are just my experiences. And so I view the soul, if you will, as a continuum that is gathering experience and gathering love, as you said in the introduction. And so I believe that the soul has an intention to when it comes here in this lifetime, this earth experience, to work on unfinished business, if you will, whether it's either a healing or whether it's a creation. And then I think it's really, really, really important to do everything you can while you're here. And here on this earth, you've got a reflective foil of nature, because your nature too is reflected by this nature. It carries the life force energy, and so do you. And so you can ask questions of it and achieve things while you're here on this earth that you can't while you're as easily, certainly while you're in between lives. But then the soul goes on and on and on, and until there's an eventual, how do I say this? Being absorbed in the all. So the fact that where your identity as the I and even your ability to want starts disappearing. So that's my experience. I think I answered the question that he's asking.
Well, speaking of nature, we're going to get into this, the meanings of life and nature. Nature has become one of my passions in the last few years. I had a message, I've talked to people about it, it's on my blog, about asking Mother Earth what she wanted of me. And she just wanted to be seen and noticed and recognized and loved. And there's a longer answer, but that's the essence of it. And I started looking at nature. In fact, I've just recently, as people know, took a sabbatical from all this work I've been doing. And it was just going into nature and thinking and just being, and it's just been incredibly rewarding. And I'm much more calm about everything. And I'd like to be like nature, just like nature, organized and at peace and all of that. It's been healing and enlightening and vitalizing for me all my life, actually. And everyone except one of my mystical experiences, as you would call it, have been when I was alone in nature. So I know you're all about nature, Gerry, and I just want you to tell us everything you can. And you have said that nature helps us, and coming into our nature helps us become awakened and expanded. So tell us what you know about nature.
Right. The light from the sky spoke to me another time. It's only done that like that twice. And in this area, it was in 1992. And I was working in Alexandria at the time, but living in Clifton, which is a wooded area. And the light came to me through the trees again, same way, and told me to go to a particular place. If people are familiar with this area, it was on Route 15 above Route 66, and to look west and to recognize how much nature feeds the soul. Those words were very distinct. And so I immediately did this and went to that area and just reflected and was so grateful for nature. And then then went back. And then the next day, the announcement that was made that the Disney organization was going to be putting a theme park, and somebody remembers that, right? And so luckily, people made sure that didn't happen. But that was a dramatic experience that related to nature from above and how important it is for each one of us. The particular methodology that I use when I work with people in nature, and that's either individually or in groups or in retreats, etc., is to go to nature with a question and then ask permission. It's of nature, ask permission to interact, watch what shows up to interact with you. It might be a tree, it might be a blade of grass, as we spoke earlier, etc. And then ask permission to interact. And presuming you get that permission, you usually do, sometimes you don't, then you just move on. Then absorb the answer that part of nature is giving you to your question. And you'll recognize that it's a process, and it goes deep into the subconscious and the unconscious. And then it's if you think of nature in a way like an unconditional love of Mother Nature, etc., there are lots of ways that can fill in the missing pieces. And then at the end of that interaction, make sure you give gratitude. Gratitude is so important at the other end of this. So being in nature, walking in nature, if you have, higher mystical experiences too, grounding by being in nature, totally being loved while you're in nature, very, very important. And speaking of Mother Earth, the Earth came to me I think it was 1992. I was working with a shaman, and she came to me as Mother Earth and told me that she was dying. This is my experience, whatever. And she told me that what could help her was the love of children. And at that point, I thought she meant little children who are 5 and 6 years old, which I'm sure is true too. But now I'm thinking that it's her children, which is all of us. And what can we do? So I've been speaking about Mother Nature, and we're starting a quilt. My organization is starting a quilt similar in style to the children's version that we did, but it's called Mother Earth's Sacred Ground. And we're just now starting this, and we're going to be bringing it forward to the women ambassadors whom I've worked with before to see what they have to say, what they'd like to illustrate. So yeah, Mother Nature and nature as Mother Nature, as the indigenous people experience, very, very important connection. And being your own nature. Would you like me to tell the mockingbird?
Please.
Right.
That's a beautiful story.
Well, it's indicative of the importance of being your own nature, whatever that is, or whoever that is. This is in the year 2000, when it was the millennium, and everybody was looking at what are we going to do for the millennium? How are we going to be? All that kind of thing. And I was going to be official representative at the Millennium Forum at the United Nations, representing this work. And somebody that I knew really well was saying, Gerry, you really ought to focus on one thing. You're just all over the map. And I was thinking, oh, you're right. I need to be only focused on one thing, because it was a very intelligent person, somebody I cared for. And 2 nights in a row, while I was thinking about all of this, a mockingbird came at 3 o'clock in the morning and sang outside my window. And a mockingbird, at that point, when I looked it up, it said a mockingbird has 22 different songs. And I thought, well, if that's the mockingbird's nature, and this is my nature, then it's okay to be me. And I think a lot of what we're really looking at, period, is it's okay to be me, whoever you are. It's so important just to relax and be your own nature. Absolutely.
And you have said that to tune into nature, it helps you tune into your own nature, or something like
I've
that.
found that it absolutely does, very much so. It reinforces the ability, the okayness to just be you, like the ideal mother would do, let's say, of being unconditional love and loving you just as you are, without saying you should be this, you have to do more, etc., etc. It's very, very helpful in that regard. Absolutely.
And you talk about your life being a love story. And to quote from your website, I love this. You say, rather than always sitting on a mountaintop, I've been in the system in many ways. These include working in the corporate association world in human relations, public relations, development, and marketing. I've also been in the larger public arena with work in the United Nations, with congressional resolutions for peace, teaching consciousness at the Pentagon, placing a peace pole at the Pentagon, giving international talks on peace, and more. This is my own love story. And I guess you would ask, what is your love story, right?
My observation is that everybody's life is a love story. The question that person was asking, what is this all about? Why are you here? And that's the existential question, of course. Who am I? Why am I here? How do I make the most of it? And what's next? That's the question that everybody is either asking or should be asking. And it's to know yourself. I mean, if as religion would say, if we're all expressions of God, that's love. That's the expression of love. And you're here to share that, to experience that, and then share that with others in whatever kind of a way you can express that. Because it's fulfilling for yourself, and it's a gift, a natural gift to others as well. So very, very important.
So we go into nature, right? Keep our attention and do these little processes you talked about. What is your what are some of the qualities, innate something about nature that does this, in your opinion?
Again, I think I experience nature as being very conscious, whether we're talking a tree, a blade of grass, and I'll tell the blade of grass story in a minute then, if you will. But they're all different manifestations of nature, which again is the manifestation of the life force energy, as we are. And so there are many different forms, many different expressions. And when we talked earlier, I told you my blade of grass story. Way back when I was first starting to use this reconnecting with nature work, I've forgotten the question that I went to nature with, but what showed up for me to respond to me, if you will, was one blade of grass. I was living in Alexandria at the time, and luckily there was some grass outside this high rise where I lived. So I went and connected to the one blade of grass, and all of a sudden I was out into the universe. And what it was showing me is that the force that the life force, if you will, that feeds the blade of grass is the entire life force that feeds the universe as well. It's the same life force, but it manifests in different ways. Just like Janice is one manifestation, Gerry is another, June is another, Valerie is another. And you want to be that expression that you are, which is an expression of life and expression of love. Yeah.
Expression of light and expression of love.
And the more light and the more love you can carry, then in answer to the question that was coming earlier, and you got to remove the resistances to that. The resistance that goes, I'm a bad guy, I'm not good enough, I'm holding back from really truly being whoever it is that I am. All of those, the negatives, which is the reverse of the life force energy. That's why evil is a word that's, the reverse of live. And so it goes backward rather than forward. And so if you want to fully express yourself, whether it's in other dimensions or whether it's doing whatever it is that you love, which is so important. Does that help?
Yes, let me ask then. Anybody have any comments or questions for Gerry on the topic of nature and who we are and that kind of thing? Yeah.
Valerie, can you mute yourself or at this point? I don't know, maybe she might not be right in front of there. She's somebody who has studied with me and has had lots of experience. There you are.
Right here. My only concern is that my internet connection is not very good. That's why I'm off camera. So I don't know if you can hear me.
Right.
We can hear you a bit, yes.
Do you have anything to say about the importance of working with nature or interacting with nature, Valerie?
Oh, I have a lot to say about the topic, and I was fortunate to go through two workshops with Gerry on reconnecting with nature. But there were many lessons and many insights that nature provided. But what comes to mind right now is that I learned that I have this whole support, new support system that I was not aware I had, and especially when I felt alone, it truly helped me feel supported and loved, just going into nature and connecting on a very deep level helped me feel very supported and loved in difficult times. And it was a tremendous discovery for me. Yeah.
Thank you, Valerie. That's a really good point. Whether it's feeling supported and safe and loved, whether you go into nature on your own, or Valerie was part of, and Lena has been part as well, of a virtual group that I did with a few times that I created actually, but using the interactive with nature methodology. And we would look at various areas. This was 12 weeks long, and it was done mostly virtually. And each week, the person would go to nature with issues that everybody has problems with, somewhere or other. The mother, the father, the anger, whatever, the major issues that people have with. And then nature would help fill in the gaps, so to speak, and give people the emotional, would fill in the gaps, the emotional healing, if you will. And then what the people in the group would do is that they would describe their experiences to the other group online, and the rest of the group, and if the other people would only respond if they had something positive to say. That would be something like, oh, I hadn't thought about this. Your experience made me think about this. Or, oh, that's just amazing. They would never say, oh, you should have done it like this, and why didn't you do it like that, kind of thing. So that aspect of being complete by nature, and then having actual people who are a support system for you when you're going very, very deep. and don't normally open yourself up that safely to people.
Mhm.
Lena, do you have anything to say about that, or anything you'd like to add to that? Are you still there?
Hey, everybody. I think I just want to echo what Valerie said. It was really astonishing to me, actually, how responsive nature was. You don't really think of it that way usually, as it's more of a one-way interaction, in the way that we're trained. But if you just ask and wait and say thank you, it's very profound. I mean, and you feel larger, I guess is the way I would put it too. You feel larger because you've become conversant with nature instead of just being sort of a one-way conversation, which is what most people have.
That's a good way to put it, Lena, because you actually get larger, or the being that you are. This contains it in one regard, but the soul that you are actually does get larger as you have that experience of love. And Lena has been the head of sustainability at George Mason University, so she knows sustainability. She knows nature from a lot of ways, but then to know it internally and personally too, really does make a difference.
Yeah. Does any of the rest of you have any nature stories? Go ahead, Jane.
I had a really fun one the other day, and I was surprised. I was meditating outside and trying to do some decision making, and I had turned around. I heard something go plop to the ground. I turned around. I was expecting it to be, maybe a hawk or something like that, getting something, but no, it was a squirrel with a baby in its mouth, this biggest thing, and its arms around its neck holding it. I said to the squirrel, "What are you doing? what have you got in your mouth?" And then I realized I could see these cute little paws around the neck. This is kind of late to be having babies in the fall, but this was clearly a large squirrel. So that large squirrel, it seemed to me to be a large squirrel baby. So I don't know, it probably pertaining more to me and giving me insight into how, the squirrel walked along the wall and just looked at me, and then it continued along, and then it looked at me again, like, yeah, it's just the way it is. You can carry these things. So that has a lot to do with my personal life, if you know me.
I really miss. I've moved fairly recently, and I miss the squirrels that used to come to the back door, and I would feed them with my hands, and they are absolutely wonderful. The relationship you can develop with with animals, period. Absolutely wonderful.
I do need to ask them why they are eating our non-wood porch.
Right.
And what they got pumpkin in my pot. Like
for a few weeks, even now, sometimes 5 months later, I can feel there was love. There was real love that developed between the one squirrel and myself, and the one me missing the squirrel and the squirrel missing me. And in a way, this when I was teaching at the Pentagon, I was also teaching a class of 28 people of how to go into higher dimensions and so on and so forth. And one day I came in to teach the class, and there was an attorney named Mike at the back of the room. There were about 28 people there, and I was so excited because I had just learned how to talk to squirrels, or to communicate with squirrels. And I remember him just sitting in the back of the room, just laughing. And he said, "Gerry, I never know where you're going to be teaching generals or talking to squirrels." I said, in a way, it's the same thing. Because if you can communicate, you have to kind of change. Oh, I'm talking to a general. Oh, I'm talking to a squirrel. But being able to communicate and edit, so to speak. It's very important.
Catherine, you have a question?
Okay, I have, I live in St. Thomas in the Caribbean, and a mile from our house is Megan's Bay, and it's three quarters of a mile of gorgeous, gorgeous beach. And behind the beach is a grove of trees. It's an arboretum and palm trees and grove. And every time I go in there, it's like there's this force field that greets me. I mean, it's literally all throughout my body, goosebumps, the whole bit. Every time I go in there, and I go in there 3 times a week to say hello. And I feel like, and I never thought to ask permission to ask something. I've only just been in the presence of this wonderful, whatever it is, energy.
Wonderful. Yeah.
So,
And this particular work of asking permission, it was new to me 25 years ago, of asking permission of nature. And I found it also started translating to interactions with humans too, because so often we presume, and we just kind of barrel in and whatever, but asking, even mentally asking permission to interact rather than having it be a one-way street. It's interesting. But your experience sounds fascinating, right?
yes. And then one time a friend followed me in, and I was like, oh, darn. And she was talking like this, and I went.
Yeah. Not everybody gets it, right?
But it was like, I don't want to disturb everybody in here. But anyway, it's just beautiful. So I go tomorrow morning and I'm going to ask permission to ask something.
Well, experiment with it and see how that works for you, right? And maybe ask a question when you're entering that, and then relax and see what happens.
Okay.
It's a nonverbal kind of a thing, but you could relax and see what happens.
I will.
I'll have to learn to ask permission. You just ask. But sometimes it works. I remember asking the wind to blow, and in another 30 seconds, that would happen.
Jerry, the island that I live on, Sanibel Island, is 75% wildlife refuge. And last year it was destroyed by Hurricane Ian. How would you talk to, and it's come, and the plants are coming back like amazing, but if you were here, how would you talk to the wilderness as it's healing? What would you say?
I think it's all about love. You loving the plants, the wilderness, you sharing what you have, and if you are you asking, how would you ask them what it's like for them? That's one way. Go ahead.
So we are kind of on parallel healing journeys, and I think we can help each other, right? Is that right?
Absolutely. And what you will often see in nature is a parallel healing journey. That's a good way to phrase it. So and that if that is what you're seeing and experiencing, then sharing the love, sharing the understanding back with them, and asking them to share their understanding and their flowering, if you will, coming back to life, however you want to put that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It will often be a reflection.
Interesting.
Of who you are inside. And I noticed that June is here. Do we want to talk about Candace at some point?
Oh my goodness, yes. One of these, okay. Let me quickly say, one of my goals and one of the things I'm excited about, where I would like to put together a group of people, and I have them in mind who they are, to talk about the spirituality of animals And I know somebody that's a horse whisperer. I know somebody else that does insects. I know another person that does cattle and beings like that, and birds. And I've experienced birds with messages and everything. And the spirituality, how spiritual they are, how multidimensional they are. I'd like to get everybody together. And we've already had an interview with, is San Angeline here? No,
Yeah,
okay.
Her,
Anyway, she was. Anyway, there she
she-
is. You're here, June. Okay. We interviewed her about the spirituality of dolphins. Their master, there's actually spiritual masters. Anyway, I'd like to put all that together. Oh, St. Angeline is now writing a book about dogs and the spirituality of dogs. And the title is The Ascension of Heidi, which is one of the dogs, Ascension of Heidi. Anyway, and there are a number of dogs. So she thought the ascension of this one, the ascension of this one. And one of them was named Candace. And you had an encounter with Candace. Tell us about it.
I did. This was some years ago. I would guess 10, 15 years, something like that. And I was going to visit June at her home, and walked in the room, and there was a long-haired dachshund at the other end of the room. And it just blew me away, because immediately above her head, I saw 10 dimensions that went all the way up to Buddha. And I thought, oh my gosh. And I don't find that every dog has a consciousness like that, but I mentioned it to June. And she told me later, and I don't know whether she wants to unmute and say anything about this or not, but that she had mentioned it to Candace, and Candace said, it's good to be seen. And I thought, yeah, it's good for everybody to be seen, whether you're Janice or Gerry or Candace, etc. I had another, I don't know if June wants to say anything about that or not.
June, are you there? Well, go ahead, Gerry.
Okay, yeah. Speaking of animals, and different animals are different levels of consciousness, but I had a cat at one point named Jordan. He was a long-haired Himalayan. And I was living in a high-rise in Alexandria, and it was a kind of a lonely time, and I was thinking, oh, this is before I got this cat. And I went over to the shopping center. I was going to go to Safeway to pick up some groceries. And as soon as I got in the shopping center, there was this voice, non-audible, but definitely words. It came saying, come into the shopping center. I'm here waiting for you. Or come into the pet store. I'm here waiting for you. Oh. And I thought, and then I just kind of I heard it, but I kind of thought, let me just table this for a minute. Went into Safeway, and I was checking out, same thing. Come into the pet store. I'm here waiting for you. And so I went into the pet store, and there, kind of little paw going up against the glass was this beautiful kitten, long-haired Himalayan. So he was only with me for about 6 years. He died relatively early. Wonderful, wonderful cat. And we had a wonderful relationship. And he died of a kidney situation. And so I was just grieving really deeply. And, when you're doing that, you make excuses for getting another cat. You think, oh, I travel, I can't do this. Oh, no, etc. But it's just really because you're grieving so deeply. And one day I was pumping gas of all the mundane things. And above my head to the right here, Jordan, my cat, came to me and said, I want to come back with you. So that, and then of course you can't prove that kind of a thing. So this has just been my experience. And so I thought, oh, I can't not accept that wonderful, question. And then of course you question, how are you going to do that? And so a friend of mine had 2 cats who had litters, etc. And so I just sat down in the middle of the floor and waited to see who adopted me. And it was a wonderful cat, and obvious, but some unusual experiences that you can have, absolutely, with animals, with a blade of grass, with an angel, with ascended masters, with a light from the sky. I mean, it's all different variations of consciousness, and it's all wonderful, all wonderful. A lot of this, in fact, maybe all of it, I think depends on your inner motivation and the questions you're asking. Because do you want to be connected with the very highest that you can be? Do you want to be truly your own self? Because, you know, you don't want to get mixed up with people who don't want that for you. But inner motivation is very important.
I can't imagine any of true nature being against you.
No, no, no.
In fact, it's been my opinion that nature is in a high vibration than we are constantly. That's why we feel better. That's kind of my theory. I don't know if it's right, but I feel always better when I'm in nature
Well,
and uplifted.
It's holding the life force. And panentheism is the term for that. And yeah, it's right. Very, very important. And it's being its own nature.
Yeah.
One of the things that on my wall here is about being a force of nature. It's by George Bernard Shaw, and it says rather than being a sniveling, weeping little thing that's complaining about the fact that the world is not making you happy, and so being a true force of nature is extremely important, and thinking of that as love.
Isn't that our nature?
I think it is.
Yeah, I think.
The love story, right?
Yeah, yeah.
We all have our own version of the love story for sure.
Any more questions, comments, experiences? Well, as part of your love story, you founded the communities of peace, right?
Right.
The communities of peace, and amongst many other things you've done. But let's talk about that for a minute, because we hear all about the new earth and bringing about the new earth and becoming new earth people. And in reading about the communities of peace, it sounds like what you're doing with that is helping the world in a very personal and community kind of way. So tell us about that.
Well, what's not in the websites, et cetera, is how the original nonprofit came to be, because I don't always speak about the interdimensional interactions for obvious reasons. You know,
Yeah.
You don't want to be thought crazy, or all of those things.
Right.
Even though the motivations may be really good, et cetera. But so in 1995, 3 of the Ascended Masters came to me and wanted me to start a nonprofit. And at that point, they wanted me to start something called the Masters Group, because they wanted people to understand that everybody has the capacity to become at the Ascended Master level. They did not want people to sit in awe of their level and never think that people could get there to those places. So if anyone here is familiar with the Ascended Masters, they were Katumi, who is otherwise known as Saint Francis. So that's the nature connection. Jesus, which everybody knows who Jesus is. And then an Ascended Master called El Moria, who is in charge. They all have specialties, and his specialty is organizations. It's being behind big organizations. So that's why I originally started the nonprofit, and the Masters Group still goes on. Eventually, I changed the overall name to Communities of Peace, and that was because, or the communities part, I was an advisor to the congressional resolution for a Department of Peace. There were about 15 of us that were asked to come into the Capitol and give input as to whether we thought that a Department of Peace would make a congressional resolution and then be a viable, would it go somewhere? Most people thought that it really wouldn't go anywhere much, resolution maybe, and I thought, well, long shot, but why not do something in the meantime that demonstrates from ground up how people could be if they're operating from a different motivation of peace, et cetera, of sharing the highest parts of who they are with other people. And so that was the motivation to start the first community of peace out here in Warrenton, Virginia. And then Fauquier County is also an official community of peace. So we've done, so it does have spiritual input immediately. But we've done a number of things out here, and then there are also about 10 other communities across the United States, including Salt Lake, the whole Salt Lake Valley, which did a lot when they took this on. In Warrenton, we've put a peace pole and a meditation bench and peace gardens into Rady Park, if you know Rady Park, or the people who are local here. And people still tell me that they come to the meditation bench to have a deep conversation with somebody, or to just look at the little stream there and to have that focus of peace right there with them. And so it's made a difference in the energy of the park as well. Somebody was just there the other day that is fairly new to that area, and they're saying, wow, this really feels good here. So you watch kind of things that you did maybe 15 years ago that people are still using and still playing out, which is very, very nice. And Judy is in a discussion group that we have on Tuesday mornings on the book Braiding Sweetgrass. And I would guess that some of the people here know that book. This is something that the Episcopal Church is sponsoring, this particular discussion group. And that's really gone some very nice places about how people are interacting with each other, telling their stories, especially about nature in this particular discussion that's going on just, currently, just this morning, as a matter of fact. Judy was telling the story, which I wrote a little blog about. As a matter of fact, Janice, if you read it, about what if we're all violets? Did you have? Judy was
didn't read that one.
Judy was the one who came forward with that story.
What if we're all violets?
Knowing that, or learning really, and then knowing that when the violets who were wilting and she rescued them from the store would touch each other, then they would thrive. And so she became known as the violet rescuer, right? Which I love. But I was taking from there, what if we're all violets? Because we do better when we have a support system, when we can be our own nature, when we can open up and just plain be ourselves, and when other people let us be ourselves and appreciate us. Yeah.
And when we touch nature too, when we go out and we touch nature, if we touch the leaves on the trees, or anything like that, it's a connection. And
very much.
And it's a deep connection if you let it be a deep connection.
And you're coming to nature with a respect and with an acknowledgement when you touch it, or you wouldn't even be doing it that way. So that speaks for itself, that your own nature, that connection is able to happen because you even think to touch nature and want to. You bet.
If we in our own communities would like to do something like this, how do we start? And what would be say the mission? What would be the ideal to you?
Well, when I started out to describe what Communities of Peace was about, when I wrote about it, that long ago, is that we wanted to create programs for the people to study and open up their own true nature, if they wished. I didn't want to make it mandatory for people who are in a community of peace, but I wanted to make it available, that they could study, they could open up with Reiki, which is really energy and light and love that you're carrying, the attunements to Reiki, and the work with nature, things of that sort. So there are ways to take classes and start studying, etc., whether it's virtual or in person. So I wanted to create programs for people who wanted to open up more into their own nature, for their higher nature. And then I wanted to create projects that people could be involved in that then would give them the opportunity to express that nature. And there are different, if you're in a community and want to have it declared officially a community of peace, you can, which is what we did with the 10 or so that we have done some years ago. I went to the mayor and the town council, et cetera, and asked if they would do that, if they would make that official declaration. I don't know that that's mandatory, but to have as a goal that you want to be expressing more of who you are, and then to create various projects. One of the things that we're doing at St. James, for instance, I was in a meeting about that today. There is a cemetery that the church owns and is looking pretty grubby. It's an old cemetery and nobody's maintaining it. So there are a number of people who would like to work doing different things. We'd like to have a meditation bench there for people in the neighborhood to come and just meditate. They don't have to belong to any church or whatever, but it's so whatever appeals to you in your own community that is a project that will be good for the community, that will also encompass the possibilities for cross-fertilization. I'm very big on cross-fertilization because you have to know what your goal is. But then you need all different kinds of contribution and expression to help meet that overall goal. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Here in Warrenton, of course, we have Airlie, where Earth Day was initiated in 1969. And so I've done a lot of work locally at Airlie. I used to have an office there at Airlie, and I would do workshops and retreats and things of that sort, because nature is very important to me and to most people around here. But it doesn't have to be related to nature, but it certainly could be in your own communities. Definitely.
Yeah, environmentalism is so important, and helping the animals around here that had this drought and to be fed and nourished and cared for, and just in general environmental things, including the animals around here, would be very good.
That's very up right now. I mean, climate change is such a huge thing, and I think people are traumatized because they don't know what they can do. And if you can't get into some sort of action, then you're stuck, you're frozen in a kind of a trauma. I've written columns about that 15 years ago now, about climate change and trauma, going through the stages of grief: denial, anger, depression, bargaining, depression, and finally acceptance. And so you watch people playing that all out. But if you can do something, if you could share your love with whether it's the animals or whether it's the birds or whether it's nature itself, and then you're doing something. You're in some sort of action, which helps the trauma, et cetera, and it also helps the community. I started a few conversations locally here a couple of years ago with women in this case, because I think women get the fact that our bodies are the earth in a lot of ways. So the relationship to Mother Earth maybe is easier. It doesn't mean it's exclusive to women. But I started something called Playing Your Part in the Climate Change of the Heart, because climate change is on the table. But coming from the heart the mind is important, of course, but coming from the heart is really a big deal. And then what do you love to do? How can you share yourself from your heart? And then cross-fertilizing to that, because you don't have the whole answer, but interacting with other people who do want the same thing and have their own contribution is fulfilling, and supportive, and it also works.
Well, working in something you love and seeing the consequences and having camaraderie with others. I mean, this has been, in my experiences, also incredibly healing for the person doing it. Incredibly healing to have that joy and the energy along with others and doing something. I've known people that have healed from incredible diseases by doing that.
That's correct. Yeah. So
They just disappeared.
You're expressing yourself, you're sharing, you're moving forward. So regardless of how serious, and it is a serious situation, but at least you're in action and you're showing your love, really. Very, very important right now. And lots of different ways that can be done too.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. A lot to think about and know about here. Thank you so much, Gerry, for coming here. Any comments from anybody about Gerry's work or all the things she knows?
I just have please forgive my ignorance here, but you've mentioned peace pole multiple times.
Okay.
What is a peace pole?
The peace poles that I'm speaking of, they're about 6 feet high normally, and they're inscribed, "May peace prevail on earth." They were started in Japan. The idea was that this is hopefully a universal goal, and that the more of these that are all over the world, then it's a focus for people to have that will create a field of consciousness where that goal can hopefully be moving forward. So there are thousands of these all over the world. Sorry, I should have described that. Sorry about that.
No, that's fine. It turns out we have one in our church.
Yeah.
I just didn't know what it was.
Yeah, that's what it is then. Yeah, good.
Okay.
In the meditation.
Where do you live, Peter?
In Vienna.
Oh, yeah. Which church is it? I used to live in Vienna.
I go to Oakton to Unity of Fairfax.
I used to sing in the choir at there and at Lakeville. You probably know Lakeville, yeah, for years. So yeah, those are what the peace poles are, and the one in the Pentagon, as far as I know, still stands in the Pentagon in the prayer room. I check every once in a while to make sure, but it's still standing. So yeah, Unity is a really good church, and they would have the peace pole there.
Yeah, they have it in the meditation garden.
Very nice, great. It was a good idea, to what's a common goal for everybody? How can we create a field of energy that and the field of energy makes that's what Rumi was talking about when he was talking about beyond everything there's a field, I'll meet you there. That's important.
Gerry's offered generously to give us a closing meditation. Thank you.
If you will, it's been a great pleasure. If you'll close your eyes here and just connect, with the absolute beauty that is inside each one of you. The holy divine nature that is you. And has been waiting to come through even more, to be coming out, if you will, to be coming through, to be expressing in ways that somewhere deep inside you have always known is there to be expressed, to move through the challenges, to be moving forward like the life force energy does. There are levels and levels and levels in you that are waiting to be opened, waiting to be unfolded, waiting to be expressed, waiting to be shared, waiting to understand the full value and the full import of who you are and what you have to bring to the world. It's absolutely wonderful. The true divine nature that is you is unique, it's special, and it is needed. It is needed at these times of world challenge, if you will. So thank you for being here present with us this evening. It has been a great joy and a great treasure to be with you. I ask that the divine, with God, with the divine nature, be penetrating who you are so that you're able to carry even more of the light and the love and the confidence of who you are as you come forward. Many blessings. And it has been a great pleasure and great honor to be with you this evening. Amen.
Thank you so much, Gerry, and thank all of you for being here. We'll meet again in 2 weeks. Just look at your mail and you'll hear about it. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And thank you for the guests. Thank you for your newcomers here. It's Gerry's people.